This is the Samsung Watch 5 Pro, but next week I'm taking delivery of an Apple Watch Ultra. The question is, which one is going to remain on my wrist? So I've had the Samsung Galaxy Watch 5 Pro strapped to my wrist for about a month now, and I absolutely love it. And I've realised there are two reasons for this. Firstly, it's the design, and secondly, the battery life. If we start with the design, it actually has a round face like 99% of normal watches. It is chunky, there's no getting away from that. You can probably see there how chunky it is on my relatively small wrist, but having kind of got over that shock initially of having this kind of hockey puck sized thing attached to my wrist, I really like the look of the Watch 5 Pro. As for the battery life, it's the first smartwatch I've ever had that can sail through 3 days. I know that the Apple Watch can go beyond 1 day, but you still have to charge it each night just to be sure. This proves we're way beyond that now. Next week, I'll get my hands on the Apple Watch Ultra, which I categorically do not need. But that got me thinking, how do these two flagship wearables stack up? And are they comparable at all? More importantly, which one is going to spend longer on my wrist each week? If we start with the pricing and positioning of these two watches, this is admittedly where the premise of this video potentially comes unstuck, but bear with me. The Watch 5 Pro costs £429 in the UK, and the Apple Watch Ultra is nearly double the price at £849. Apple tells us that their new watch pushes boundaries and that it is designed for athletes who do the same thing. Whereas Samsung takes a slightly gentle approach by suggesting that the Watch 5 Pro simply helps users power through their workouts. Although they do get a bit more bullish when they tell us that it is stronger than your toughest workout. Clearly, these devices are aimed squarely at people who work out a lot. The most obvious difference is that Apple has swung the Ultra in favour of people who are into extreme fitness and professional endurance, whereas the Watch 5 Pro is a bit more relatable to mere mortals like me. Moving on to the displays, and I think if I found the Watch 5 Pro a bit too big at first, I'm going to have quite a surprise next week when I get that Apple Watch Ultra on my wrist. The Watch 5 Pro features a display measuring 34.6mm, whereas the Apple Watch Ultra is a wrist encompassing 49mm. That's Apple's biggest ever wearable display. It is huge. It's ridiculously bright as well. The Ultra screen can hit 2000 nits. 2000 nits on a watch, which is double what the Watch 5 Pro is capable of. The Apple Watch Ultra's display is still square, obviously, but it does look somehow more appropriate on that watch. I think it's just because it's this kind of slab of I can do anything. It just kind of works in that form. There's just no contest when it comes to numbers, materials, and capabilities. The Apple Watch Ultra absolutely smashes the Watch 5 Pro in the display stakes. Yet, I've never looked at this watch and thought it's too dim, and I've certainly never thought it was too small. Quite the opposite, in fact. On to notable features, and this is where the comparison gets vastly unfair. Let me dig out just a few of the highlights from the mammoth Apple Watch Ultra features list. It's got a dedicated customizable action button in international orange, whatever that is. There's a bespoke Wayfinder watch face with night mode. There's a siren capable of emitting an 86 decibel sound pattern. There's dual speakers, a depth gauge for underwater depth and temperature readings, and up to 60 hours of battery life later this year. There's bespoke straps for diving, hiking, and trails. L1 and L5 GPS for advanced signal processing. It can operate in temperatures from -20 degrees C right up to 55 degrees C. It's EN 13319 certified, whatever that is. It's even a fully featured dive computer. The list goes on and on and on, and I don't understand any of it. Of all that stuff, I'll probably only put the action button to use, and that's mainly because I'll use it as a shortcut to an egg timer. The Watch 5 Pro, on the other hand, offers a much more, I'd say, approachable and relatable bunch of features. Alongside the normal smartwatch stuff, such as notifications, heart rate monitoring, sleep tracking, that kind of stuff, the Watch 5 Pro enables runners to import GPX routes for ease of navigation and offers a trackback feature that guides you from your starting point or back to your starting point if you get lost. But it's that 590 milliamp hour battery in this watch that has impressed me the most. Obviously, I'm yet to experience the Apple Watch Ultra in that regard. I will report back on that, but I do remain skeptical about how much stamina that battery has, regardless of how much chest beat rating Apple gives it. Put it this way, the Apple Watch Ultra is like your mate who turns up to a hiking weekend having spent his entire month's salary in blacks. He's got all the gear, all brand new, labels still hanging off it. Whereas the Watch 5 Pro is your dad. He comes every year, but he turns up in the same pair of boots he's worn for the last 5 years, a grubby pair of walking trousers, and a backpack that is far more kind of coffee shop than let's head up Everest. Can you guess who had the better weekend? watchOS versus Wear OS. Right, this is where things start to fall down a bit for Samsung, I'm afraid. The Watch 5 Pro is powered by Google's Wear OS with, I think, some fettling by Samsung. That's always a concern, but because this is my first experience of Wear OS, I won't just point the finger of blame squarely at Samsung. You see, Wear OS, when pitched against watchOS, is a bit rubbish. I can describe it as functional. I think that's probably fair. It just gets the job done, but it's sluggish, it's clunky, and it's not particularly easy to use. I thought a lot of that was down to the fact that I've been using watchOS since about 2015, but the more I use this watch, the less convinced I am that's the case. Despite this, and as I've noted before on this channel, I am a fairly light smartwatch user. I use them to tell the time, obviously, track workouts, although I'm never really sure why I do that because I do nothing with the data, but I use them for timers, keeping an eye on notifications. That's about it. And for all of Wear OS's faults, it does enable me to do those things relatively easily. But it has to be said, the king of wearable OS remains watchOS. When you get your hands on a device like the Watch 5 Pro, you do realise just how polished watchOS is. How many people do you see wearing Samsung watches? I don't think I've ever seen one in the wild. And then if you think about how many Apple Watches you see each day, they are absolutely everywhere. And this is the challenge for every other smartwatch manufacturer. They need to obtain some of that priceless Kudos that the Apple Watch has gained over the last few years. It's the fitness watch most people want, even if it's out of their budget, even if they don't have an iPhone. And I think the Apple Watch Ultra confirms this. Within the comments section of my far out Apple event reaction video, which I'll link to above, there are loads of people who, like me, have pre-ordered the Ultra, even though they categorically do not need it. They really want one, but they assume it's not for them. And the thing is, you'll only come to that conclusion if you hang on every word of Apple's marketing campaign for the Apple Watch Ultra. You see, Apple knows that most of the people, including me, who buy that device will never take it scuba diving, trail running, or mountaineering. They'll wear it during a 5K treadmill run, and they'll use that 86 decibel siren to scare their mates at the cinema. It's aspirational, it's supercar silly, and it has all of that Kudos that I talked about a moment ago that brands absolutely die for. So, pricing aside, the Watch 5 Pro was always off to a challenging start because it just isn't an Apple Watch. I'm keeping this Watch 5 Pro, it's going absolutely nowhere, and in fact, I intend to switch regularly between this and my Apple Everest Edition watch when that comes next week. I'll wear them for different things, I'll switch between them each week, but the question is, which one will spend longer on my arm? What do you think? Let me know in the comments. To get my full thoughts on last week's Apple event, keep watching for a link to my full reaction video.